Welcome to Christian Statesman. I'm your host, Zach Wagner, and this is episode 120, The Foibles of Youth. Winston Churchill is credited, accurately or not, with the famous epithet, "If you are not a liberal at 20, you have no heart. If you are still a liberal at 40, you have no brain." Regardless of who originated the quote, the point is well taken. Liberalism in its purest forms is actually a fruitful venue among the young. The older we get, the more we must delude ourselves if we are to cling to serious left-wing thought. Extreme leftism, currently manifest as socialism, communism, or worse, has never worked and never will work. It is antithetical to the individual liberties truly required to advance the human condition, such liberties as are set forth in our own Constitution. But this fact is often lost on the young. I once leaned towards liberal thinking in my youth. My heart was full of zeal and energy to do right, but my mind had not yet formed the ability to think deeply or critically. And so it continues in the current generation, their zeal harnessed and directed by corrupt and ideological teachers to embrace unsustainable leftist dogma. It is easy for the emotions of the young to be catered to, manipulated, and corralled into agendas that do not actually benefit them, but grant power to their unseen overlords. Sweet-sounding rhetoric that may appear humanistic on the surface, but underneath contains insidious objectives, is consumed like cheap beer by the youth of many nations and cultures. Every totalitarian politico knows that youth are their most fertile apparatus. Hitler formed the Hitler Youth right from the beginning of his dark rule, disguising his agenda in inspiring nationalistic and restorative German ideals. He built a force of young people who would soon be slaughtered wholesale on the fields of Europe and Russia. And he did so while family members often looked on with pride in supporting a twisted nationalistic illusion. Dr. Hong Noir was a surgeon in Phnom Penh in the 70s when the Khmer Rouge marched in and took over the country of Cambodia in the matter of a day or two. He recounts in his famous book, Surviving the Killing Fields, that he was in surgery when two Khmer Rouge soldiers walked into his section of the hospital, put an AK-47 to his head, and ordered everyone out. He was forced to leave his patient with his abdomen opened for thoracic surgery on the table to die. He was marched out of the city and into the countryside, where he was to be re-educated by communist operatives. This meant starvation, torture, and grinding daily manual labor. This went on for years until over half the country of Cambodia was slaughtered in the name of leftist ideals. Dr. Noir managed a miraculous escape to Thailand and eventually the United States. He ended up playing the role of Dith Pran in the movie The Killing Fields alongside Sam Waterston. The soldiers that put a rifle into Dr. Noir's face that day were 12 years old. The average age of a Khmer Rouge soldier was 14. Misguided youth indeed. Revolution has always been sold to the young with ease. It is easier to preach systemic dissatisfaction and revolution to someone who does not have the experience to understand the human cost such endeavors might entail. As retired fighter pilot Colonel Bud Anderson points out in his memoir To Fly and to Fight, he watched his friends die in large numbers across the skies and on the ground in Europe. The average age of his fellow pilots was 22. The average ground soldier was 19. He was an old man at 25 when World War II ended. He remorsefully notes several times that war is a young man's game. He said specifically, "Hollywood does not note this in their movies, but that war was fought by children." What a different world it would be if we could teach our children the true value of life, the reality of God, the broad spectrum of the marketplace of ideas, and a solid moral framework of right and wrong. A generation or two, that was a job for the family, with a mother and father united in raising their children according to timeless values. Somewhere along the way, that task seems to have been abrogated to the state. It is now the purview of the schools to undertake such indoctrination. The concepts of an all-knowing God and the nuclear family were left behind years ago by them. And this, among other reasons, is why the left is focusing so hard on dominating the education curriculum in America. As Cleon Skousen warned in his 1958 book, The Naked Communist, a clear goal of communism in overthrowing America is to infiltrate and take over our educational system. How do you think they are doing? The next time we see young people marching in the streets, burning, smashing, and looting, claiming to be protesting Black Lives Matter, police brutality, or whatever cause of the day is credited with their unlawful actions, remind yourself of the lesson history teaches. The foibles of youth are always useful when directed by those elders who may have a darker agenda. Thank you for joining us today. Please subscribe, and as always, have a very blessed day.